Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Stitch Sessions. I hope you're all doing well, and I'm so happy to have you join me today on another crochet adventure. If you're new here, I'm Karen, and I love all things to do with crochet and crafting crochet. And for those of you that follow me along regularly, welcome back. Today I'm going to be working on a stitch tutorial. So I'm going to be showing you how to do the Trinity stitch. Now, for those of you that saw my Trinity Stitch stocking for Christmas of 2021, you will remember that I used this stitch for that project. Now, that was done in the round, so that's a great example if you'd like to use this stitch in a round project. So I did mention that I would show how to do this stitch in a flat project. So that's what we're going to do today. So you can use this for scarves, blankets, all kinds of things. So that's what I'm going to show you today. So for this tutorial, I just have a little bit of scrap yarn here. This is actually some leftover yarn from another project, and it is a Lion Brand's Heartland yarn. I just love this yarn. And I can't remember exactly the color of this, but I used it for the Call Me Cables hat when I worked on showing you guys how to work cables. So if you're curious, I'll leave a link for that in the description box down below. So I just have a little bit here just for a swatch, and I'm gonna be using a 6mm hook, which is known as a J or a size 10. It's probably a little larger than you would need for this type of yarn. It is a medium 4-weight yarn, but I like to sometimes have my stitches sit a little bit looser. And as always, anytime you work on a project, make sure you have a pair of scissors and a yarn needle on hand to sew any ends you may have. So let's get started on the Trinity stitch. So we're going to begin by placing a slip knot onto our hook. And we're going to begin by stitching up a chain in multiples of 2 or an even number of stitches. So for this tutorial, I'm just going to chain up 12 chains. (10, 11, and 12. And just make sure that your chain is nice and even, it's not bunching. And as always, your first chain of any project, make sure you don't stitch that too tightly because it will cause your work to buckle and bunch. So once you have your chain, what you want to do is find the second chain from your hook, and remember, we never count the loop that's on the hook. So we have 1 and 2, and into that chain we're going to place a single crochet. Just like that. And that's how you're going to start the first stitch of every row of this particular stitch. Now we're going to actually begin working the Trinity stitch. It's also known as a single crochet 3 together. So this is how we're going to do it. The stitch you just worked, you're going to go back in there and insert your hook and pull up a loop so that you're going to have 2 loops on your hook. Then you're going to go into the next chain and do the same thing, pull up another loop. So you have 3 loops on your hook. You will then go into the following stitch and do the same thing, or in this case, into the next chain. So you will end up having 4 loops on your hook, and you have worked into the next 2 stitches next to the stitch you just worked. Once you've done that, you're going to yarn over and pull through all 4 of those stitches. So you have something that looks like that, okay? And now we're going to chain 1. So you've just done your first Trinity stitch. It's very similar to a star stitch. And so we're gonna do it again. So you're always going to then begin inserting your hook into the stitch you just worked, the very last stitch. So you're always inserting your hook into 3 stitches. You always begin inserting into the stitch that was just worked and pull up a loop, and then into the next 2 stitches. So there's the second one, and there is the third one. Okay, so again, 4 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through all 4. And then you end with a chain 2. So it always takes 2 stitches essentially to create that Trinity stitch. You can see it creates that really pretty little kind of spiked effect. Okay, I'm going to do it again. So into the stitch that was just worked, we insert to pull up a loop. then into the next stitch, and into the next stitch. The goal is to always end up having 4 loops on your hook. And then you'll yarn over, pull through all 4, and chain 1. Nice and easy, just like that. So you're going to do that all the way to the end of your row. So if you're doing a scarf, for example, and you had quite a long chain, you would continue doing this all the way down. Now I have quite a short chain here, so I'm just going to do that again with you guys. Insert, insert a second time, and then a third time. Whoops, just like that. 4 loops, pull through, and chain 1. And now I've got 2 stitches left. So remember, I always start working into the last stitch that was worked. So I insert there, 1, 2, and into the very last stitch of the chain, which is right there. Okay, 4 loops and pull through. When you create the last Trinity stitch, instead of chaining 1, we're not going to chain 1 for the last Trinity stitch. You will then go back into that last stitch that was worked, insert your hook again, and simply single crochet. And your first row looks like that. So at the end of your first official row, you will now have an odd number of stitches. So remember, I chained 12 and then I single crocheted into the second chain from the hook. So that means that for every row from here on out, I'm going to have 11 stitches. And if you're ever unsure, after the first row is the best time to count your stitches. So I always like to count backwards from the loop. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So that was my turning chain there. So from now on, I'm going to have 11 stitches. And now we're going to go on to row number 2. So for the next row, you're going to chain 1 and turn your work. And you always begin by placing a single crochet back into the very first stitch of your row. So essentially you always start and end with a single crochet. So your rows are always flanked by single crochets. Then we again begin our Trinity stitch. So now it should be a little bit clear. We've got some actual stitches to work into as opposed to chains. So I'm going to go back into that very first stitch, pull up a loop, and now into the next stitch is technically that chain 1. So we just insert our hook there, pull up a loop, and now into the next stitch, we insert and pull up a loop. So you have 4 loops, yarn over, pull through all 4, and chain 1. Now be careful that you don't chain too tightly that chain 1, because you want to be able to then work into that chain in the subsequent rows. So just be aware that that chain 1, you don't want to chain too tightly. So let's do it again. So I'm going to go into the very last stitch that was worked, insert my hook, go into the next stitch, and then into the following stitch. So the stitch that's a little tighter, that tends to be that chain 1. So that's why it's important. You don't want it to be too tight. 4 loops, yarn over, and pull through all 4 loops. And now I'm going to chain 1. And see, I'm kind of leaving it nice and relaxed. That I will be very thankful I did that in the next row. So again, insert into the previous stitch, insert into the next stitch, and insert into the next stitch again. 4 loops, pull through, and chain 1. So I think you're getting the gist now. So now we've worked 2 rows and just kind of creates that really pretty little texture there. Okay, and I'm just going to finish row 2 with you since it's such a short row. So insert into the stitch that was previously worked, now into the next, and into the next, and 4 loops, yarn over, pull through all, and chain 1. So now I've come to the last 2 stitches, okay? So I insert into the previously worked, I go into the next stitch, which is right there. So at the end, sometimes it gets a little tricky to see. So just turn your work so I can see those V's there at the top of that stitch. And this is where people might get fooled. It might feel like, I don't really see the next. Now I've got my 4 loops and I'm right at the end of that row, and I'll pull through all 4. And remember, the very last Trinity stitch, we actually go back into that last stitch there and place a single crochet. Okay, so just go ahead and do that, and I will meet up with you once I've completed my swatch. And just a reminder that once you get to the end, make sure that you do not chain 1, that you just place a single crochet into the last stitch. And remember that there was a turning chain there, so don't miss that last little stitch at the very end. Okay, and here it is. I just ended up using the rest of that little ball of yarn there. So you can see it creates this really pretty texture. I did a total here of 13 rows, and it's the same on the back as it is on the front. And there you have it. So now you can really see the effect. This would look really pretty in a scarf, a blanket, pretty much anything. So I hope you found it pretty easy. Those of you that really like the star stitch, this is a great alternative, a little easier. It's only a 1-row repeat. So I hope you'll have a lot of fun doing this. In fact, leave me a comment in the comment box down below and let me know what project you are going to create using this stitch. I'm always curious to see the ideas that you guys come up with. Now, if you have any questions at all, make sure to also drop those for me in the comment box down below. And as always, you guys know you can reach me directly at info@crochetcrafty.com. And make sure, if you haven't already, come visit me on the website at crochetcrafty.com and sign up for my monthly newsletter. I gift you a free written pattern every single month. And if you've enjoyed this type of tutorial, do give me a thumbs up, and that lets me know that you like seeing some stitch tutorials thrown in along with some regular crochet projects, and I'll make sure to add more in there. And if you are new here and you enjoyed hanging out with me today, make sure to press that subscribe button, and that way you'll get notified every time I upload a brand new video, which is every Wednesday morning. So in the meantime, guys, have a wonderful day. I hope you enjoy whatever crochet project you're currently working on. Take good care of yourselves and each other. And I look forward to seeing you all in next week's session. Bye-bye.